Well, it's finally cylinder head day. All that work I got done previously, it's time to stop dilly-dallying and putting that off and get after it. So I've been honestly kind of delaying it because it's a little bit involved with, he just got to kind of focus and it takes a little bit of time, and it was hard to find that one chunk of time I knew I could dedicate to just putting cylinder head together. Because it's a lot of like, I assemble, measure, take apart, set, reset, remeasure, just a lot of that. It's not hard work, it's just time consuming and tedious. But we're finally going to dig into that. I finally got my engine over there on the engine stand, which means I cleared space off right here. And as you can see, I got the cylinder head finally dug out of the corner. I have all the parts I need for it finally. Actually, if you look, the box right there, those are my new Vance & Hines exhaust valves. I don't run any super exotic stuff. These are just off the shelf stainless Vance & Hines intake and exhaust. Like I said, I'm not a professional engine builder, and I don't go for super top dollar, best I can fucking find type parts. I race a lot and I need off the shelf parts. So I will give up that fine little, every little last horsepower I can get. I'm willingly giving that up to run off the shelf stuff that's not super exotic. And I think it's more relatable too. Not everybody runs, not knocking them, but not everybody runs a DME or a Williford racing level of bike. This shit right here, this is like weekend warrior shit. And I hope that's what you guys are kind of connecting with here. But now it's time to dig in, do some cylinder head stuff. I'm going to show you how I should say, because everybody's got their own way and somebody will probably tell me I do it wrong. I'm going to show you how I find and set installed spring height on a cylinder head, because that is kind of a critical thing to set up. Valve springs are under a lot of abuse, and they need to be set up proper for long life. And I'm going to kind of show you how I follow the guidelines for the manufacturer. I run Kibblewhite valves or valve springs. Super nice quality parts. Actually, besides the valves, everything in the cylinder head is Kibblewhite. So I'm going to show you how I set up my cylinder head without any fancy tools. It's just going to be some basic measuring, a caliper, and simple math. So let's get going on figuring this stuff out. So I already got my cylinder head out, and I did one step already. I just started kind of getting rolling here, but I got one measurement I needed already. I'm starting with the intake side. As you may recall, I had some damaged bucket bores that I had to rehone. I actually installed myself all new valve guides, and we already lapped in all the new intake valves are all lapped in by number, left to right, 1, 2, 3 through 8. And what I did is take one of my intake valves and come over here, and trying to do this one-handed is a little tough. So I just ran that valve up through that guide. Now I did that through number 1, number 2 valve, number 2 guide. I did that all the way down the line. And what I need to do, my first number, is I need to get a measurement of that. It's not the spring seat, but that's the actual cylinder head, the machine surface and the cylinder head down there, to the tip of the valve. And I just want to make sure that they're all consistently the same. That number for each valve, just that it's pretty close to the same all the way across. That would tell me, one, if these were used valves, that would tell me if the valve tips were ever ground to set clearances, like if it had valve seat work done, or if I had a seat falling or sinking into the head, it would stand out. And my number I got already, this is my crude drawing. As you can see, here's the valve head. There's the invisible dash line that represents it being the valve stem through the cylinder head. And this up here, this is just a rough drawing here. But from the base of the cylinder head where the spring seat will go to the tip of the valve, I measured them all. They were roughly 1.445 to 1.447 roughly. For simple math, we're sticking with the 445. There's only a couple that measured a little bit different, but that was good to see that that was all consistent across the board. Now, what I'll do is these spring seats, I'll drop these in. So now that I know that all 8 are roughly that same number, I can focus on my number 1 cylinder is where I'll start. So I'll drop a spring seat in there, I'll take another measurement, I'll record it. Then I'll have to pull the valves out of the, pull that valve back out of the head, and I'll put a retainer and a keeper, and I'll get a measurement on that valve of how much from the, try to explain this so it makes sense, where the spring sits on this retainer, from where it sits on the retainer to the tip of the valve. I'll need that measurement. So I'll show you how I get that. So let's get going on getting some measurements off this. But I'll kind of show you roughly how I get my measurement here. So I got my number 1 intake valve. We'll stick it in. I'm just holding it, the valve closed with my hand. And then I will go in, and this is how I get my measurement. All I want to do is make sure we're down. You can actually feel the caliper, the flat spot on the caliper, square itself up to the tip of the valve. And that's how you know you're going to get, a right, accurate measurement. And this was one of them that was actually 1.447. So that's just that process. Get yourself some of these forceps. You get these at swap meets for like $1, but they close and then they'll lock and they're stuck. You can use these for clamping hoses shut too. But I like them because they got real small tips and kind of a long reach. And you can use them to hold on to a spring seat. We'll drop that in and make sure it's down all the way. So now I got a spring seat sitting in there, a number 1. But what I need is this measurement here on that, focus, there. That lower step, that shoulder is 40 thou thick. So what I need to do is take, on my drawing here, I got 1.445 from cylinder head to tip of the valve. So I got a minus 40 thou off of that from my spring seat representation here. So take 40 thou off of that. We're at 1.405. Our installed height we're shooting for is going to be 1.330 to 1.340. So now what I need to do is take these 2 keepers in that retainer, put them on a valve, and I'm going to get some dimensions for up at the tip. So now we'll show you how I do that. Now, I know some of this is going to be kind of hard to see because I'm trying to film this awkwardly and it's small stuff. What I need to do is, let's see if I can show you. So the valve tip is actually recessed in the retainer a little bit. It sits down in there. I'm going to get a dimension from the valve tip to the top of that retainer. And then I'm also going to take a measurement of the top of the retainer to this step here, to this first step, and also the thickness down to the bottom of where actually the spring sits down here. So I'm going to get those 3 dimensions and then I'll show you what I'm going to do with them. Okay, bear with me on the math here now. So I got all my measurements off that I needed. We got 75 thou from the tip of the retainer to the first step. That's a 40 thousandth step. That gives us a total of 115 thousandths of an inch from where the spring sits to the tip of the retainer. Now to get from the tip of the retainer to where the tip of the valve actually is, that's 40 thou. Now to get from where my spring sits here on the retainer to this here, I got a minus 40 thousandths off of that total number. which gives me a total of 75 thousandths. So that means that from where the spring sits to the tip of the valve is 75 thousandths of an inch down. So if I take my total number here that I got with my spring seat, 1.405 from tip of the valve to spring seat. Now I just figured out that from where the spring sits on the retainer to the tip of the valve is 75 thousandths. So I got to come down 75 thousandths. That number is 1.330. We're right in the range of where they want us for installed height. So we're good. Now all I got to do is take all the exhaust valves, stick them in there. I'll do the same thing. I'll measure from the cylinder head to the tip of the valve. Hopefully we come up with a number similar to what we see here, which in the past I have. So I'm hoping that means everything will fall in line. I won't have to run any kind of spring seat shims or nothing. And, everything will be just, even all the way across. So I'll go ahead and I'm not going to assemble the intake side just yet because I got to do some lapping on the exhaust valves. So I'll lap them first before I do any measuring. So I went ahead and lapped in all of the exhaust valves, and then I took that initial measurement I needed from the cylinder head to the tip of the valve, and that number comes out to be the same as the intake side, which is kind of how they're designed to be. So if you have an unmolested head, original valve seats or haven't been cut, all new valves that are, a quality valve, all those tolerances should be repeatable, So I'm not going to say I got lucky, but that's how it's supposed to work out. If you got good stuff, they should go together pretty easy, and your measurement should all fall in place. And as far as just following the instructions, not even instructions, the specs for the valve springs you're using for what max lift they're capable of and what installed height they want them at. They want them at installed height for a reason. That's a whole nother science of valve spring and valve spring harmonics and how close they get to coil bind to actually calm them down and to keep the valve spring from bouncing. And basically that's what kicks keepers out and kicks valve shims out. So a good setup valve train is what will keep a motor alive. And like I said, this motor had been alive for quite a while before I over revved it. And when you over rev something, everything kind of goes out the window. Specs, measurements, nothing matters. Over revving, it's into its own whole new world. It's a realm of damage. But for now, I'm going to start doing some assembly. And I like doing my assembly kind of a mass at one time. All the valves are going to go in. I'm going to flip it. All the spring seats are going to go in. All the springs, all the retainers. And then I'll drop in all the keepers. And then I got a tool that makes it real easy. I just got to pop them all down and they just drop on. So now we'll do some assembly. So like I said, I run all kibble white parts. So I'm going to show you how I do valve seals now. So what I'll do is I'll put just a little drop of oil on every valve stem. Oil and assembly lube is your friend. You don't want to overdo it, but you don't want anything dry, especially since this thing's going to sit for a little bit yet. This motor is not going to go in right away because that motor's in there, and we got to do a little bit over there before we do a little over here. But real simple. What I'll do is take, drop a little oil on there so I'm not putting them on dry. And I'll take a small little 8mm socket and pop it right down, and you'll feel it actually snap onto the valve guides. So I lied. You probably saw me fumbling with the socket. It's a 6mm socket that I used to put the seals on, not an 8. So that's what that was all about. But as you can see, all of my valve seals are in there, installed all the way around. Now it's time to drop in some springs, retainers, and keepers. So if you've never used a tool like this, go ahead and get yourself one. Got a little magnetic insert there. So when you're taking cylinder heads apart, you just push down on the retainer. Push down the retainer, and then that magnet grabs the keepers. Just bang, bang, bang down the line. You can take a head apart. When you go to put them together, with the insert, it's got a little spring-loaded tip that pushes the keepers down into the retainer around the valve tip. A lot going on, but it's a slick tool and it makes assembly super easy. I forgot I'm supposed to do a transition like this. Ta-da! So there we have it. One assembled cylinder head, fresh valve lapping job, 8 new intake valve guides, 16 new valves, all new springs, new spring seats, new seals, new retainers, and from my stock of keepers. I keep keepers for everything. If you ever get a junk motor and you disassemble it, it's a good idea to save some stuff. You never know when you're going to need it. Like when you completely junk everything in your cylinder head and you need to, replace some things. But there it is. So there you have it. That's a wrap on another one. Like I said, this is just a dude in the shop rebuilding the motor for his bike so he can go racing. It's tedious, it's time consuming, a little bit of guesswork, there's also a little bit of past knowledge, but either way, go out and build something, go do something, try something. Worst thing that'll happen is you'll fail and be like somebody from Illinois. But yeah, if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you not from Illinois. See you in the next video.